we started running our own numbers on just that. What happened to people after they came to us? The average is more than 100% increase in the first year.
That's amazing.
After joining us. Because there's a transition period, there's this. And I reran that number 3-4 times. I was like, Dad, I don't believe it.
Okay,
I don't believe it.
What's the 5 Ps? Do you remember it?
Proper preparation prevents poor performance.
There you go. It doesn't matter how much money we get. If we don't close, it's no money, right? So no close is no money. I'm everything that I am because of my dad's death. And I wouldn't be as successful without his death. All right, welcome everybody to the Jason Theory. This is season 4, episode 5, and we are joined with the senior leadership. That's right? Senior leadership of Jameson Sotheby's International Realty in Chicago. And we are going to be hitting on a bunch of stuff that people find extremely interesting, or I hope they do. The direction of the market, how technology is affecting the market, social media in the market, and the craziness and the battle between Zillow, the brokerages, and everything else that has fallen between. So it's been a crazy time. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves first, and then we'll get rocking and rolling. Whoever wants.
Thanks, Jason. I'm Jim Miller, and I'm the president of Jameson Sotheby's International Realty, and work with Chris on the direction of the company.
Chris Feurer, CEO of Jameson Sotheby's.
That's it?
That's it. That's what I got for today. I figured it'll all come out as we start talking. So.
All right. So let's talk about the fact, first we're upstairs, that you purchased the company end of 2008. It's an amazing time to get into real estate.
Great time to purchase.
First and foremost, how was that? Because you were a big agent and like, how did you say, hey, listen, we all have entrepreneur spirit. That's why we do what we do. But you went to the next level. What made you do that? What was the decisions? And take us through that journey in your workspace.
Started as a carpet cleaner.
Yeah. So in college, I started a carpet cleaning company.
Okay.
Built it to like a few trucks. And then I partnered with another guy who was into carpet dyeing and repair. So we ended up having all these apartment complexes in kind of crappy areas, by the way, too. So, we'd have these trucks going around, and then we did Lowe's theaters. So it was like a 24/7 service business.
Okay.
And it was a real grind. It was not fun. And so I got to see like apartment buildings, how they operated. And then I had another buddy, he was buying HUD foreclosures. Mm-hmm. And he'd call us up and be like, hey, $300, make the carpet and the floor look better. And then I'd ask him later, like,
what year was this at?
Maybe like 95. Let's say like 92 to 95, somewhere in there. And so I'd ask this guy, like, well, what'd you make on that deal that I charged you $300 for? And I was sweating. He's like, 30 grand. So, at some point I'm like, oh, okay. So
I'm doing the wrong thing.
I am not in the right business at all. So I pivoted quickly and did the 2-week real estate class. And so long story short, without getting details of how we got from there to there, Jim and I hooked up back in like 96 maybe we worked for a developer basically, like kind of like you guys did, like a little bit of your story. We worked at a developer's office doing sales, doing our own sales, doing some of their sales. But through that, I started doing my own developments. And so I ended up doing about 3,000 units, mostly condo conversions. And then I maintained a real estate team. And we had about 45 people, ended up at like Koenig and Stray.
Okay. We were all at Koenig and Stray.
We were all at Koenig. There was a good,
there was an overlap. That was a good core.
That was the time, like 05, Koenig and Stray.
Yeah.
So I'm sure we'll kind of weave that into the story later. But there, there was a little magic back then.
Sure was.
And so long story short, 08's kind of coming into the picture, but no one else saw it. If you guys can remember, 05, 6, and 7 were just hard charging. Everything sold. Everything went up 25% per year. Buyers were coming out of the woodwork. You'd put a big building on the market and it would sell in record time.
Yeah.
You could not make money.
20 contracts in an afternoon.
Zero.
Literally. Like I remember standing in a condo conversion on January 15th. I had the flu. There were no windows yet. And like I'm in there just freezing my ass off. And it was like one of those 1 to 4 open house, I just stood there and just handed out contracts. That was it. Like literally, like here's a contract. You know, we sold the whole thing out.
One for you.
One for you. Oh, and they would stand in a corner and kind of map out where they're, you know, it's just a floor. They'd be like, oh, my couch goes here. I'll take it, honey. Like that was literally how things sold back then. So not
They
to
had no
tangent
job,
too much.
probably.
Oh, no, you know, no income verification.
Yeah, no
you know,
docs,
like-
no doc
No doc
loans.
loans.
Their parents gave them 20 grand and that was enough.
Yeah.
And so at some point, these development partners I had, you know, we kept getting bigger. We ended up doing a 400 unit project and a 360 unit project. So these were getting pretty intense.
All in Chicago, or were you starting to branch out?
Here's where the story goes bad. All the city developments were actually pretty good, like a 100 unit conversion up on Pine Grove, and then all these 30, 20 units all over the city. So those were good. And then in like maybe 06, I decide to chase my tail, go down to Florida, North Miami, and pretty quickly bought a 410 unit high rise down there to convert in Sunny Isles Beach, Florida. So say that happens in like 06. The market in Florida crashed in 07. They started, lenders started not lending to buildings. They blackballed, literally blacklisted pretty much all of South Florida.
Okay.
Like Washington Mutual.
They just wouldn't rent. I mean,
They wouldn't lend on those buildings. And so in 07.
Why was that? You know?
Too many investors
Too many
is what was
investors.
happening.
Okay.
Like Miami, South Florida was fueled by South America and investors and,
Okay.
and some European money coming over.
Thank you for the
And
clarity.
it is interesting. If you guys saw The Big Short, it kind of gets
Yeah.
into that,
Yeah.
why it happened.
Yeah.
So, I'm knee deep in this thing happening in 07 down in Florida, and you could tell the light switch went off overnight. Like we sold 180 condos in 1 month. The next month, 0 in that building.
August.
Like literally, one month that happened.
Wow.
So subsequently, I was partners with some development guys, and they were also partners with Harry and Charlie, who had started Jameson Real Estate.
Okay.
And we did a dinner one night, and Harry and Charlie, the premise was they didn't have like an heir apparent to Jameson. And Jameson back then was a little stodgy. It was a very solid company, not a lot of fancy marketing or anything, but they did all the developments.
Developments. That's what
Remember
I
that?
knew them for, development.
Yeah, so they're kind of known for that, right? So
Okay.
they had maybe, they had like 300 brokers at the time. Am I misquoting that? Maybe 150?
Yeah.
And they were primarily down south in Florida?
No.
No, this is. I'm
back up in
Sorry,
Chicago.
I flipped
Yeah.
back to
Okay,
Jameson
okay.
in Chicago.
Okay.
So I go to this dinner, and by the end of the dinner, I had like a tentative handshake to acquire Jameson. And
How much wine did they give you?
the
You
theory
got roofied.
the theory at the time was that developments were going like this.
Yeah.
It was a whip reaction, and then I saw the end of conversions, which is what I did. I knew conversions were going to come to a sharp halt, so I decided that I could take our marketing prowess and apply it to a brokerage and grow a brokerage. To create more of an operational business, which, by the way, would have fed future real estate deals as well, because Jameson was a bit of a deal shop.
Okay.
So our team at Koenig and Stray was about what, 240 million?
240 annual sales in
07.
yeah.
And then you bought Jameson.
So that's like a $500 million now.
Yeah.
600 billion,
That'd
600
probably
million.
it'd be the biggest in the market.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
It would
Yeah.
be the,
You
that'd
were
be
your
the-
own
Jameson
brokerage within the brokerage.
We were, yeah. We were, when we
man.
left Koenig, Chuck Orrell was like, you don't understand the power you have here. And it didn't, it was just like, it was just a broker. I was there. I didn't really,
Yeah, I was on his team doing 40 million.
yeah. Like
240 million in
say from 03 to 08.
man.
Like kind of a running.
Number one in the country. But
Vesta's going to be upset that they weren't the first $500 million company team.
Well, we didn't make it there, so I guess they are. But,
Well,
Jameson
adjusted for
adjusted.
inflation.
I'll take that.
Jameson wasn't that much bigger.
No, it was. I think at the time they were doing 300 million. So
Okay.
like an annual basis. So
Right.
So it kind of makes sense. It's like, hey, we're going to take this, and we're going to be a business now.
Yeah, we would infuse this our culture and our progressive marketing, and it was stodgy. Is how I would quantify it. So we closed September 1st, 2008. As you guys remember, Lehman Brothers crashed. I believe let's call it October 1st, 2008, and then the ensuing mayhem.
Disaster.
So I owned the company for maybe, I'm in there, woo, here's the cool signs, and we renovated the office, everything was great, and then, just got beat over the head. At the same time, all the developments went to crap too. So it was.
Right.
So you sit back, let's say you sit back in January, like how do you business plan that? Like how do you say, okay, this is what we need? Like this is the reality.
Yeah.
Development's dead. How do we pivot?
Candidly at that time, it was stay above water. That's
a great pivot.
That's about what you could do is you're in there 14 hours a day, 16 hours a day through the weekend. Doesn't matter what you're doing. You're in there and you're in it with everybody because there's no other choice. There is just no way to. So if you guys remember how you felt back in 2008, we needed to be therapists and we needed to be the ones talking about Obama just got elected and what does this all mean? And, a bank would fail every month. And there was
1 month
warfare.
We closed like 10 deals.
I think in January of 2009, I think the whole entire company, the 300 plus the 240 million closed 10 deals. 10 deals. The overhead didn't go away, by the way.
Yeah,
say the overhead's 400,000 a month or whatever it may have been at the time. So that was hard.
That was a lot.
That was hard.
What did you learn from that experience that year? So that next year, in terms of just trying to stay afloat, what was the goal in terms of, okay, this is how we're going to restructure? I mean, think about just worrying. And I know it's been a while, but think about just worrying about staying afloat from, let's say, 2008 to 2011 to where you guys are now. What adjustments did you make in that time to get to you where you are now?
I think the better question is, what didn't we do? Every single day was truly triage. So if you think of triage, you're funneling everything through. You're with the team, shoulder to shoulder. Like it's warfare. It's really hand-to-hand combat is what it was. Much less strategic during that time. And I think for pretty much anybody, unless they didn't get hit upside the head during that period of time, it was warfare. Truly day-to-day combating. So it was hard to create the next thing or be like, hey, we're going to move forward in this way, or we're going to open a new office or whatever it may be. It was
we were dealing with our own personal, you had your building
financial situation
Florida,
that were affecting everybody.
So it was running the business as well as
400 units in Florida went defunct. 360 out in Schaumburg was, no more sales. And so it was just literally just day-to-day survival. That was the strategy at that point.
When did you see things start to shift for you guys and say, okay, we're here, maybe 2012, 2013. Hey, we're starting to pick up some momentum. Now, what's the next 10 years look like for us? Where do we want to go?
The perseverance, the hard work during that period of time, there were marquee agents coming over. There were people we knew back at Koenig. There were other agents. So we were lucky enough to grow steadily, not tremendously, but steadily with good brokers.
But there has to be a secret to attracting good brokers, because
especially in a time, like that.
So that also is part of.
I think because we were so in it every day, because we were all in the office all day. It was one big office, so the cohesiveness of the people that were there at that time, you created such camaraderie. And talk about what agents probably like in the end, are you here for me and with me? And so everything we did was cohesive with everybody.
Well, we took the Sotheby's International Realty brand in 2011, February of 2000. That was when things kind of started to,
a turn.
Yeah.
That was a turn.
How did that come about?
So if you all recall, there was Sudler Sotheby's,
yes.
Which started in 2005, by the way. So the true franchising of Sotheby's International Realty started in 2005, where they really started bringing on franchises. Sudler Sotheby's was one of the first three in the entire world. So,
I didn't know that.
So they came on board in 2005, and by 2011, it was in complete and utter meltdown. There was some nefarious things happening behind the scenes, and
nefarious. That's a good word.
Well,
I like that word.
It's true. So the reality is, Sotheby's came to me directly and said, "Hey, we've targeted you, and we'd like to talk to you about taking on the brand in the Chicagoland area." And at the time, I think we were pretty fiercely independent. We came from the Koenig Stray, GMAC, all those things.
All the reiterations.
All that bullshit.
And we all know how that turned out. And so that was not appealing. We were like, we are not really, we're entrepreneurial. We want to do things on our own. But I think what happened is they flew me out to New Jersey, and then I flew down to the opening of what is now Premier Sotheby's down in Naples. So those two things, when I got to look under the hood and see what the value was of the brand and the offerings, it was a hell yes. And Jim and I operate pretty much the whole business on you make decisions. It's a hell yes or it's a hell no. There is no in between.
Black and white. I love it.
It's very black and white. Hell yes or hell no. So that's what was the impetus to go ahead and say, we're going to do this. We're going to take on the brand and become the true luxury brokerage in the city of Chicago.
I do think that is very synonymous with the marketplace, even till today. I mean, we always felt that Sotheby's was the most luxurious brand.
Yeah, I think when we took that, when we made that partnership or that affiliation with Sotheby's International Realty in February 2011, I was selling at the time, and I can tell you, overnight having that brand on my card got me open doors that I had never had open before. I was selling on the high end of the market, and before I was the king of the $500,000 condo with split face block on the side, right? Like that 500 to $1 million was my market, and was still doing a lot of new construction. But at that moment, we started wearing the blue. I was invited into a lot of opportunities I never had a shot.
And over the last 5 years, it really seems like you guys have really honed the brand, the type of agent, and really have started to attract pretty much what I think is the best talent in the city. What have you done over the last 5 years, other than like the journey that you've taken and really honed in? You know, like we had the call yesterday, and the first person, I called two people afterwards. It was two people that had called me to talk about when we had left, that they wanted to leave wherever company they were at. And I called the person up and I'm like, what'd you think? He's like, oh my God. It's like, I should have left a year ago. Yeah. And he was just like, we just sat silent on the phone. And I'm like, man, what a difference. And I think what we were talking about on the phone for a while was your guys' background, which really makes the difference, I think.
Well, it started at Koenig & Stray, and I think that's a place to weave in what we learned about that boutique.
Yeah, but also buying a company and then all of a sudden having these terrible times and then having to really say, hey, this is what is needed, not only for us, but for our people. And we have to continue to push. Like, you don't have to continue to push the envelope in terms of marketing and in terms of your recruitment and stuff like that. You do that to totally, honestly, always stay ahead, right? Like anyone, you guys are both entrepreneurs, right? Like everyone thinks their last day is tomorrow. And if you don't think your last day is tomorrow, right, you got a problem, because when it is your last day, you've missed it.
Yes.
Right? Like you said upstairs when we were talking, when it's too late, it's too late like this.
Yes.
And if you don't think that too late's literally tapping on your shoulder at all times when you're an entrepreneur, be in real estate or wherever you are, you're not running fast enough away from that person that wants to take your spot. But I think that's the attitude. Like for me, like when we first met with you, I was like, yes, this is the attitude. Like that you constantly have to be pushing the barrier of what's being done.
Be better.
It's funny how you
that's
said
my
this,
fault. That's when I met with you guys, that's what my feeling was.
We've been in startup mode since 2008.
You have to be.
Well, the funny thing is we never know what we're strategizing works until we hear it from the outside. The fact that you said 5 years ago has a lot of meaning to us, believe it or not. We had heard when we joined the brand, it takes about 10 years for the brand to mature in a market, meaning for the brand to be very fruitful for each individual person, i.e., oh, that seller did pick me just because of the brand. You know, and it's those things that they're like mysterious and intangible before you get there. So it took us 10 years, 2011, 2001. And coincidentally, COVID hits, as you guys know, in 2020. And, we had a lot of time to sit together and sit on Zoom calls and do all the things we all did during 2020. And again, to your point, we decided at that point, we were going to dig really deep, next level deep, and say, what do you all want? Not only what do you want, what do you need? What do you all need as individuals to catapult yourself to wherever you're trying to go? And so we did a ton of individual meetings and brainstorm sessions and talked to CEOs all around the country. And we think we came up with the things that probably mattered most to you all. And I don't think anybody was asking that question. It was like, get market share, or, let's go tech, or let's go this. We wanted to dig under the hood and say, what could we really do to make ourselves not only a place that you would want to be, but a place that you would be better at. Like that, I thought that was missing. Like,
yeah, and it's one thing to ask those questions because we've been asked those questions before. It's another thing to actually execute.
Right.
Not easy. It's not easy.
People have a lot of dreams.
Oh yeah.
I've sat with these seats with all people who are successful in what they've done, and it all comes down to executing, right? Accountability, holding yourself accountable and saying, I need to execute.
And you got to push through. So the last 4 years for us have been, to say tumultuous, like we went through 2008. So, we have PTSD. We were in the grind. And then so 2020, we're like, listen, we're going to tear this thing up. We're going to tear it down to the bone, start almost from scratch, and create what we think you all want or need, not want. There's a big difference, I think, what you actually need. And so all the things you see today with the concierge level service, the hospitality service, the business hub meets social club, the next level marketing, all of these things, they were born during that period of time, and they were all pioneering things. Nobody had done them. It's like when you're trying to do something that nobody has done, we're going to try it.
We realize that human capital is more important than bricks and mortar, right? So having people, talent within our brokerage was so important. And, people operate differently now. You don't need an office on every corner.
Do you think the people that have been saddled with the brick and mortar for the next couple of years, like listen, at some point things slow down and all of a sudden you have a couple 100,000 square feet of office space and you've grown so fast and all of a sudden there's a contraction. I mean, think about the fact that things slow down for maybe a couple quarters, like 2 years ago, and everyone wrote, oh, we can't keep up with these cuts. I'm like, man, we just had like the greatest 2 years ever. You have one bad quarter and Redfin's got to close the doors. I'm like, that there's something wrong there in what you're doing.
What's happened in the brokerage world is our margins have been compressed across the board. It doesn't matter if you're Compass, you're us, you're at Properties, it's irrelevant. The margin, the agent has become more valuable, as they should. So the split has gone up and the margin's gone down. At the same time, the cost went up. So to your point, if you are spending that chunk of dollar that's left primarily on office space, on hard costs like that, then it's just less you could spend on staff and on marketing. And so we decided to pivot to these hubs that now our structure is 60% staff, 30% marketing, 20% real estate, whereas your typical real estate company would be more like 45% real estate and then a variable of the rest. So
yeah, you're almost getting like, you guys are almost, it's very interesting because talking to somebody that comes on the podcast every once in a while, Mike Marks, and he's like, you need to be, I'm like, what's going on with big box retail, this, that? He's like, hey, he's just like, the problem is they had so much space and so much went online. He goes, the reverse now is everyone's establishing this people stuff, right? So the online,
high touch,
and then once that's established, then they go into brick and mortar and they provide a place for you to go.
An experience.
Yeah, an experience, but it's just an experience or a return.
Right. It's smaller. It's not as big.
Yep.
And that's essentially, we needed to bring the energy back to the office. So we did bigger spaces, but less spaces. We just retooled it so it would make people want to be there. But the big piece is any 5-star restaurant will tell you, or hotel, to find talent, true talent. Talent means the people, the staff member that cares whether you make that next deal or not. Some people care about, the quality of my work. I got it done on time, or I was there. I was very thorough. But it's very rare to find that person that cares whether it worked or not. What was the result of my effort? So that's what's kind of taken us the longest, and that's what 5-star quality is. That's sort of the root of it. Because absent that, you can't create the result.
We also, back to what we talked before, we also craved that boutique culture that we grew up in, the Rubloff, Koenig days, right? Where, there were events. Events are so important to our culture, right?
We leaned into that because, when things are tough or times go a little different, COVID, and you're not doing as much entertaining, we went the opposite because we are relationship people. So if you start to ignore the relationship and all that comes from there, that's, I think, the little bit of the magic gets lost in our industry, which this is, we just went hard.
I also think that's very important to retain. talent.
It's everything.
If they're not invested in what's happening,
and
they
you
can
end up
leave
with different
easily.
talent. You end up with sort of selfish talent.
Yeah.
There's people that are talented, but they're on their own. They only like to serve themselves. We like to work with people that like to serve others and want to be part of something. Right.
I do like the events. I have to admit, I used to see them when we were at our other company, and I'd be like, "Look they're doing these lunches. They're doing all
why don't we
kinds
do
of
that?
fun things
People are-
with their
people are-
agents."
People are starting.
quarterly
People are starting. You guys are starting.
There's
to,
some
you posted them.
copycatters.
You post them online now. People are stealing your guys'
Oh, of
ideas.
course. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Hey,
Imitation is the
I was
highest.
going to say,
highest imitation.
we're very happy when that
Well,
happens.
we do nice places. We're going to La Colonial for our one.
Yes, we are.
Here in a couple of weeks.
Q1.
Q1.
And you guys were on your first best in class call yesterday.
Yeah, it was great.
Those are things that we hope that you find value, or the agent would be able to talk to each other openly without having to bite their tongue when leadership's there and we can't say this or that. We just try to be as in it with you as possible, because how do we know what you're thinking unless we ask the question and we're open to hear the
I
answer.
think the collaboration is nice, and I think it's nice to hear other people's point of views and what they're experiencing. Like everyone's going to bump into something and not know what to do. The collaboration part of it is really nice. And listen, like Michael said, hey, to Justin, Luke can talk offline about this, and I could tell you how I surfaced this or this. I mean, it's always good stuff to have. Where do you guys see? I mean, obviously none of us have a crystal ball, but with the evolution of social media, really the push to video, literally straight to consumer through TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. How do you see the industry pivoting towards that? I mean, obviously we're already seeing it. You guys are doing a ton. We saw a ton of stuff yesterday in terms of going social and having these experiences, WeChat, all this be part of that social experiment. Do you see a point where, primarily most of this business is done off of video and off of this and that?
Well, what we know is, the latest stats I saw on a company called Brand Builders. They put out a really interesting stat on personal branding. Older millennials between the ages of 40 and 44, 81% feel that it is important as one of their major decision-making items to work with an established brand.
Okay.
Whether it be personal or, a company. To be able to establish a brand, you have to be online now.
Yeah.
You pull up at a stoplight and it's a red light, you're pulling up your phone, right?
I won't tell the police you do that.
Well, but you look at it, that's where marketing has changed. It's all the eyeballs are on that device in your hand, So social media is so strong, and you guys have done a good job with that, and you're seeing the results of it.
I had a meeting with a guy who works for Meta about multi-units, and we were sitting down, and because we use Instagram so much, he was just like, I love the fact that when I pick up my phone, I always see you. Right. He's like, I like that because you're using, first off, he works for the company, so he likes it. But he said,
I hope so.
He said something that's very interesting. He says on all the platforms, be it TikTok, Facebook, he goes, Instagram is the one, first off, it has the highest earnings per, like whoever, the clients that look at Instagram, there's the most 100,000 plus people. He said, but the best thing about Instagram and why Meta is doing so well on that and why you're doing so well on that is that people form relationships to authentic people that are on the gram. He's like, so when they're watching you, they're starting to have an emotional relationship with you already. They're there with you. They actually will start to trust you off of the app. And I said, that's very interesting because the leads that we get from the app are phenomenal.
Right.
Phenomenal.
They DM you and say, hey,
Right.
you'd like
And and it's like, and it's never, I will tell you, it's never someone that just says, oh, I watched one of your videos. I've been spending hours watching your videos.
Yeah.
I went on YouTube. I'm watching you break down that building. I'm watching this. I'm watching that. I just think that, I mean, it's great to have connections, but I think that's where it's going to go.
Well, and that's the definition of an established personal brand. And you guys saw your results in Q1.
Yeah.
I mean, unbelievable. what you guys did.
So I'm going to ask you guys. We have a strategy internally that I have not been able to make it tangible. I've not been able to quantify it to people when I explain it. So maybe you can help us here. I feel like
Do you think Jason might have an opinion?
You guys might be the ones to use your agent brain and your street smarts to do this. But I think the biggest untapped opportunity in real estate today that I think nobody's doing even a fraction of a good job at, and I'm pointing the thumb to, but certainly all the big companies, and it's where I think we could make the biggest impact for you going forward. I've already done all the hospitality and the tech and all the stuff. It's real marketing. And when I say real marketing, it's marketing that has a result. We've proven it in the development world. To brag, we got like 85% of the development market now.
Yeah, which is complete. The numbers. I showed my wife.
It's crazy.
The numbers yesterday, and she was like, "Holy cow!"
Yeah,
we'll get into those because they're very impressive.
You try to make yourself look better, but I always try to also say, "Is that real?" I want to test myself. But the way we did that was to create ongoing marketing on a monthly basis, test it, make sure it works, and then replicate it. But if you're not doing that last step, and I know no company's doing that, testing to see if it works, to really put something out there to say, did that create a deal and a closing and a lead for you? That's just not happening in our market, nor in most markets, by the way. It's really hard to do on scale. So that's our next step. That's why we have
tracking success.
It's not just tracking. It's working with when it comes to marketing people. Like we have 12 people in our marketing department.
Okay.
Finding that exact thing we talked about earlier, that when you work with marketing people, they want it to be pretty and on brand and all the things, right? So it's presentable. They 9 times out of 10 are not interested in what the result was of the thing that they created. So therefore, the holy grail of our world is to marry those things together to create content or video or whatever the thing might be. It's almost irrelevant what the thing is, and then test it and measure it and make sure it works, and then continue to experiment on what the next thing is, because it evolves so quick. So that's how this may not sound relevant, but like Kim Kardashian Skims,
Yeah.
She had such another level with her reach, but nonetheless, she just took something that basically everybody else had. It's not like the thing she invented was so amazing, but they go out and test and do, and they're executing. You know what I mean? Like
I think
that's branding.
Yeah, but I think it's
executing.
But it's
Right.
really easy to quantify it.
Yeah, I mean, we do every day.
Every day.
But you're doing it on a one-to-one level. It's very hard from a company level because you all are unique, right? Like to feed you something and expect you to use it, you're always going to win and make it your own and do what you do, right? And that's just human
You should
nature.
have instant feedback. You should have, first off, I think your feedback, first and foremost, is the talent that you have gotten over the last 3 years. So there's
question.
instant feedback.
No question.
Okay, so if it wasn't working, what you're doing, we wouldn't all be here.
This next level to me, though, is, if we're able to do something that even the big companies, have probably presumably much bigger budgets and reach and resource, this one thing is more, it goes back to the days of 2008 where we're in it with you guys, shoulder to shoulder, and that's what's going to make it go.
What you're seeing in front of you right now is what we've done for 17 years.
Yeah.
What's the next thing? Like what's the next, outside of battling here and there and winning and being entrepreneurs.
So I don't think you battle. You battle, but I don't think you battle in the traditional sense. Like I will tell you, Sophia and I have all these discussions all the time. I'm not going to go into East Lincoln Park and try to get $4 million listings. That's not my.
We already know who's getting that market cornered, right?
Yeah, right. I'm not going into Old Town.
Right.
I'm not going into Old Town and saying, "Hey, I'm going to battle Tim Salm." That's his bread and butter. Yep. He has other bread and butters too, but I'm just saying, I'm going to do me, and I'm going to do me better every day. You're going to do Jameson, and you're going to do Jameson better every day. You're going to corner. You're going to corner who you are, and then people are going to come to it. I don't think there's this discussion I had on Monday with the podcast. There's a pie. right? We don't have to chop into each other's. Let's just make it bigger.
You're on
Let's just make it bigger.
On a very clear path there, because when you're just going for market share, then that's sort of, we're just going to go get it all.
I think you do. I think you look at what you sent us yesterday, where all of a sudden our price, our average sales price is double of number 2. Right. Your your agents you're recruiting are 6.9 million. I remember the number. The next closest was 3.4.
Yes.
That's you.
That's who we are.
Your retention, you lost 56 million.
Brand.
The next person lost like 339 million.
Yes.
So like, to me, that's
We're already #winning.
Yeah. Rolls Royce doesn't give a shit who's buying a Chevy.
I like that. Yeah, you're tapping into like the version of basically Jim and I, where we don't get greedy, i.e., we got to be it all and everything, but we do need to push forward at all times. We're always
but you're pushing forward. You're pushing forward and not to say that this is a bad thing, but you're pushing forward in your lane.
In
our lane, exactly.
That's what you want to do. You want to push forward, because the minute you miss your lane. The minute you start, like I was talking to a guy when we was talking, I was like, he's like, well, you came from a trading background. I'm like, yeah, everyone always told me, go to this pit, go to this pit, go to this pit. Like, oh, Jameson, do this, Jameson, do this, Jameson, do this. Man, the minute you do that, you're done.
We get a lot of that.
You're done. Yes. Listen, this is what we do. We're going to push forward on our mission statement and we're going to push forward on our brand, but it's going to be in the lane of luxury. And this is what we're doing.
So do you guys see that from the outside?
Yes.
That's what we're
100%.
That was the conversation I had yesterday after our meeting.
Yeah,
with 2 other people that just came.
There's not a lot of days in this market where you could feel good about what you're doing. Feels pretty good today. Just hearing that. That's a win.
Well, that's why we came, though.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why the people came with us.
True.
And that's why when people called us and I said, this is what, and I always say to people, when I had lunch with someone that asked me about this, we had coffee, I'm like, I'm just telling you why I came. It may not be a fit for you.
For us.
This is what works for me and the direction that I want our business to go to and the direction that I think they're going. So it's a brand match. It's not for everybody.
It's not for everybody.
And it doesn't matter that it's not.
No, that's a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah. If it was for everybody, we'd be a chop shop.
It would be different. It would be Walmart. We don't want to be Walmart.
No.
We get up every day thinking about our advisors. There's no doubt.
And there's a spot and there's people that want Walmart. And there's people like
that's why there is a Walmart.
There's people that want discount brokers. There's people that want 100%. This and they want that. I'm okay with that.
It's funny. We have these Canadian partners, equity partners, and they always look at Chicago. Chicago gets a little bashed, as you guys know, from other states, certainly other countries. You say Chicago, like, oh, geez.
Mobsters.
Mafia and bang, bang.
Yes.
Bang, bang.
You instantly.
Oh, they also say Jordan right afterwards. So there's an offset.
True. It mitigates it a little bit.
Yeah.
But what we always come back to is this is still like a $75 billion meat and potatoes market. There's enough to go around for everybody. It is a very deep, rich sales brokerage market that will always be there, and it doesn't fluctuate. So what's our piece of the pie? To your point here, we want to be more than double average sale price than the nearest competitor. That's the piece of the pie.
And and then as long as you have that measuring stick, you're always going to be pushing forward, right?
Always push forward.
Everyone's going to be coming at. And it's interesting you said that there's enough piece of the pie. I mean, and obviously I'm older now, but like the amount of relationships that I have now with other brokers is probably 15x than it was 10 years ago.
Yes.
And for me, and this is for Sophia too, I'm sure, because I hear her talk to all of her friends too, the relationships that we have now are why our Q1 was the way it was.
And think about your value.
I truly believe that because people want to do business with us
because they know that
they know
who you are.
Well, they know that we're not going to screw anybody.
That's exactly it.
And we can handle.
You've earned that. You've earned that over your career, and that's probably a good segue into the attack on that's happening. That network, that relationship. And that cooperation that agents have bring to the table.
Let's talk about that. So everyone is, it's It's a gunfight just because I watched an amazing series on Netflix about Wyatt Earp. Guys, please watch it. It's a 4-part series. And it's the real story of Wyatt Earp. It's really good. But the OK Corral. Yes. So everyone, like, you know,
I did watch that. That was amazing. Yes.
You've got everyone. You've got, you know, Zillow versus the brokerages. You've got lawyers versus everyone is at the OK Corral. No one wants to pick up their gun, but when someone does, it's going to be a disaster. Everybody shoots. So where do we see, you know, Zillow, obviously, well, I would say Compass shot the first bullet. Zillow has come back and said, if you're ever on the PLN, we're not going to put you on our platform. How do you guys see this playing out? And does Zillow, because they don't produce product and don't have product, Zillow's a middle person, can they survive if they go to war with the brokerages?
You know, if you back up, last year we had the NAR settlement. And in my opinion, that's when things really started escalating. That was
when the gunshots.
That was the initial shot across the bow. And I think the people in this room know that was a play for money. There was a law firm that made an ungodly amount of money. They saw kind of an easy target. You know, our NAR and our governing bodies maybe weren't the strongest in that sense where they could litigate and fend off, you know, an external attack like that. So, you know, I have my own personal opinions on why that all happened. But in the end, you know, who made better? NAR came out with some new guidelines for us. I think we would all argue that maybe we're better off, worse off. We don't know, right?
I really like how it's done now. I really do. And I think it's another reason we had a great Q1. That's
okay. Well, that's because we do too as owners. I mean, and
Jim, all along you said that the cream is going to rise to the top from this lawsuit.
Sure. Yeah.
And it has.
Yep. And so if you go back to that, then it kind of spurred on this next wave, because we probably wouldn't even have thought of this next wave had that not have happened. And what happens is when you're at a high level, say you're the leadership of Anywhere, you know, our parent company, and there's a lot of fear of risk and mitigation, because knowing how these lawsuits came about last time, and then the ripple effect and the ramification of what happened from that lawsuit, and where sort of the world is at on how they look at where the money goes and brokers and all the things. You know, if you're sitting back saying, what's the next wave? Where does this go? I mean, I personally see nothing but risk. I see all risk. I see people glomming onto anything that, whether good or bad, by the way, I think that lawyers will take a look from the outside, take a step back, and then pounce on changes and any behavior changes that happens. They'll find a pro and a con and whatever's selfish to them, and it will litigate aggressively. So, i.e., if you are an individual broker and you decide that it is better somehow or another to not show a listing to the maximum amount of buyers, when you know those buyers exist and you choose not to do that, I personally find a liability there. I find that, you know, you're personally, from a fiduciary standpoint, that would be pretty easy to litigate, to be honest. You know, you could quantify it.
Even if your buyer, even if your seller, I had a conversation, even if your seller says, I understand everything, I signed a form. I signed a form. Obviously, that doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Because
it's not matter,
we just lost.
Look at the loss.
We just lost.
In the end, you are the fiduciary. You're the responsible. I relied on your guidance. If your guidance was self-serving, then there's the lawsuit.
Yes.
Know? And it would, you know, maybe or not easy to prove up. Did I have your best interest when I guided you into telling you to do this? So.
And that's why we love this brand. For 281 years, Sotheby's has gotten to their goal is to get as many people to raise the paddle as possible.
Yes.
And that's when you have the maximum impact for the highest price for your client.
It's the nucleus of sales, and that's what Sotheby's perfected originally.
Yeah.
You know, exposure.
It's
exposure. It's our campaign.
That's the campaign. I mean, and honestly, I didn't answer your question about Zillow, but you know, it's all pieces and parts to me. It's all to me, the integrity of what you all have built over the 15 years of your career, and then the entirety of NAR and the collaboration and the relationship of agents. I don't care who you are. How could you argue that doesn't benefit every single buyer and every single seller? You have a unified group of people that are compelled to work together for the greater good of everything. And once you start degrading that, in my opinion, that's the root of this problem. Beating up on that. And that, I fear that that's where things, are trending.
I felt like a lot of the lawsuit, though, was sellers saying, well, I'm paying the person who is pitted against me to give me the least amount of money.
Right.
So
right.
I feel like that underlying thing has been there already.
And in the end, how could anybody really legitimately argue that the fact that we all work, there's 17,000 realtors in Chicago Association of Realtors, 17,000. So when you list with one of us,
I only met like 50.
You get the collective 17,000. So why would you want less? How is less better? How is less of those 17,000 going to benefit you? Because we all spend money, we all do marketing, we all have clients, we all have relationships, blah, blah, blah. So when you put that all together, that's why it works. So that's the part I'm most fearful of in the end, that when we start poking at that thing that was created over the past 100 years.
Is there a way to, like, if they do get into a situation where they're like, okay, we're going to allow this and allow this, have you guys had those conversations where you're going to sit back and say, hey, listen, we just don't think that's the best thing for our clients. So like when everyone gets sued, we can be like, hey, that's great. We're not part of that. You guys pay.
What we always talk about internally.
Can you back off that?
What we say is we are guided by fiduciary responsibility. So you said it earlier. We only work with the best agents, the best character, the most professional. That's all we have, right? So we trust that you're going to do the best for your client. So what we could do is provide you best practices, meaning what are the best practices to get the most money in the shortest period of time for a listing, for a buyer, for so on and so forth. Right. So we feel that that's our responsibility. Now, will we have the option of exclusive or whatever NAR came up with? I'm sure we'll provide the option. If you legitimately, via your fiduciary responsibility, deem that is necessary, that's the best course of action.
That's what the client wants.
Then we support that. And
but
we
even
will
if the
be.
Client, so this is my problem. Even if the client wants it, if the client is not told, like I almost think you have to have a piece of paper that says hey, this is not the best thing for you.
It's
because
going to be like the dual agency disclosure rider.
I think it is. I think it needs to be even.
And I think that's what they should do.
That's a very good comparison.
It should say, here is all the things, if you're on the MLS, you're going to be exposed to. If you opt not to, these are the places you will not be.
Yes.
And then I have a client who refuses any marketing for his property.
Right.
He does not want it anywhere but to the brokers. He's extremely adamant. He's extremely intelligent. He understands. We've had conversation. Magazines have begged to feature it. It's always a no, don't ask me again. Always, don't ask. So there are people.
There certainly
are.
We
can't assume that everybody is unintelligent,
right?
And doesn't understand. Not everybody doesn't understand what they're being told.
But over the last 16 years of the billions and billions and billions in transactions we've done and we've been privy to, maybe a fraction of a percent are that case. So where I struggle with where things are presumably going right now is when you mass market that a exclusive, meaning you are going to not show it to certain people in the market, that is good for the mass market. That's where I think
when you talk about a fiduciary, if you look at financial advisory, a fiduciary is legally obligated to make sure that their clients get the best product for them. It's a legal obligation. Big banks, if they're not a fiduciary, they can sell their product, right? You have clients have their choice. But as fiduciaries, that mindset as advisors that we refer to when we refer to our staff of agent brokers, advisors, that's a word that matters, right? We're advisors to our clients. So when you take on that word of fiduciary, it means something in our world.
If they get rid of cooperation, what does it look like? Have you guys started? Because I have thought about it at length, and that's why Sophia and I do so much straight to consumer. on the phones and video and stuff like that. But I mean, I was in an industry that, let's say, that trillions of dollars changed hands every second, trillions, and changed in 2 months. To change with one swipe of the pen, this whole industry can just get turned inside out. And it'll happen a lot quicker than the trading floors did. So like, what is that? Like, that's what I was talking about upstairs. Like, where is our headspace? What is our thought process? And hey, if this happens, where do we go?
It's the top of my mind, as you can imagine. That's
I'm very interested in that.
All I think about, and
as it should be, because it's huge.
We keep coming back to the whip effect, and that is, sort of the current nature of the world right now. Just is what it is. Things whip this way and that way. I go back to what Jim said. It may sound, elementary, but if we don't maintain our values, meaning that we're fiduciaries and that's first and foremost, no matter what decision we make, wherever we go, whatever happens next, we don't want to be bullied into compromising that in any way, shape, or form. So whatever the next step is, we believe if we maintain that fiduciary responsibility at the utmost, that's what drives us. That's what it all is. We're all going to have the same ability to do exclusive or to do this or to do that. It's just how we do it, how we train to it, how we market to it, and how we put ourselves out there. I think that's going to be the catalyst for all brokerages. And I think there's going to be a day of reckoning probably. That's, sort of in the future. So how you guide yourself right now, if you compromise yourself right now, guess what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Things will change, and those people that compromise themselves, I think, will have their judgment day as well.
I do actually think too, like, because I'm always on Instagram, like I'm friends with, you always have, because your thing sees, the algorithm knows what you want to see. I got to say, like, if you sit back and look, I think Jameson, I'm kind of answering my own questions in my head. I think Jameson probably has the strongest overall. Listen, you're going to have your Kerry McCormick's, you're going to have one-offs here and there. But if you look at the people that have that have really branded themselves properly on social media, on Instagram, and getting direct to consumers, you look at Tim Selm, you look at Nancy, you look at us. I mean, I want to say, you look at Ryan, I would say that we have the strongest presence on social media, because we do have, and now listen, there's some great agents out there too, but collectively we probably have the best agents that are pushing that envelope in that direction that you guys are going. And I think that'll help. So if a quicker option goes, we're still gonna churn.
And isn't that the point is, you saw the stats the other day, and the 6.9 million, all the things we talked about. So no matter where the market goes, we're always going to have our piece. We don't need the whole piece. We just need our piece. We'll be the strongest in that piece at all times. And that's, I think, what drives us forward is not compromising.
And I think if you get a situation where the industry decides to turn over and, okay, we're not going to do this, we're clear cooperation, this or this, all of a sudden you're sitting around, you're like, well, we have the strongest agents. We have the strongest here. So like, we don't have to rely on X, Y, and Z. Our agents will go and get that business.
And you can't replicate that.
No.
You can't. It's irreplicable.
I'm just thinking inside my head.
You got it.
Because that's my thought. My thought is, let's just establish the strongest brand that we can establish to consumers. So if anything ever happened, we're still rocking and rolling.
And throughout history, when has that ever gone wrong? That concept.
Never.
That is like, it's the hardest thing to do, by the way.
Those decisions every single day.
Every single day. Decade plus. One thing back to when we became Sotheby's, they told us, you need to be the steward of this brand.
Right.
So
we have a responsibility.
It's a big responsibility.
It's a huge responsibility. So, we take it seriously. It's no joke. If you don't take it serious, it's a 280-year-old brand, the most trusted real estate brand in the world by far. We all know it. And so, again, we need to be guided by that. It's a protective
How's the benefit of you
maneuver
guys?
at this
I'm just
point.
curious.
I know I just got a listing because of the brand.
I just think my energy is different. So I don't know how to quantify that.
Well, you seem pretty fired up today. I love that.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
He's
like,
always this fired up. This is normal.
This
is at like a 5. We haven't hit 7 yet.
We're at Friday.
Yeah,
it's
it's Friday. It's weekend. I know I just got a listing because of the brand. So I do think that the brand has done that. I also think change is always good. And I think we made a big change after a very long time. We had only been at the previous company, formerly known as Koenig & Stray. And so it was, everything for us is new, right? So everything is exciting. I mean, and granted, the newness will eventually wear off, but every time there's a meeting, we hang up and I pick up the phone immediately and I'm like, can you believe this?
She does. She calls me.
I'm like, I cannot even believe.
And then I called people that I had talked to come to the company and they said the same thing. And so, you guys are doing it right.
It is. I mean, we've been in front of some great leadership, and I think that what's happening here is what I say to people. I'm like, this reminds me of Koenig & Stray in 2005.
Yeah, that's what I say. Like, it's new, but it's old.
Right. Yeah. Right.
So it's new, but it's old.
Which is what we loved. This is like the 2.0 to me.
Yeah.
And we don't want it to become like too much of that. But at the same time, it's like people are like, what is it? And I'm like, it's small, but it's big. Like, I don't know any other way to describe it. Like, and we loved the small.
Yeah.
I just think when you're at a team meeting and you look around and you see, and I know this is like, sounds so corny to people that are listening, but when you're sitting around at a meeting and you see titans that you work with, it's like you have an ego.
You want to rise to the occasion.
You rise to it, right?
Yeah, you're like this is,
it pushes you.
You play to your competition.
Yeah,
whoever's around you, you're gonna rise up to it.
And you're like, okay, I'm sitting. I mean, I'm sitting here. I know all these people, and I belong here, and all these people here are all the best. Now, there's great people in other companies too. There's one-offs here and there.
Of course.
But when you walk into a collection like that, there's not a place that has 20 or 25. I mean, on the top 10 transactions you got in the city, would you guys have like six or seven of them?
Right?
6.
Yeah.
That's
a lot.
And growing.
And the smallest.
I'm just saying, and you're the smallest on that
list.
list.
We're the smallest, right?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, that's a flex.
That's what we strive for, and that's hard to quantify. Like you said, you got a listing because of Sotheby's. There's this mystique that's not so tangible until you experience it. So where we sit, it's hard to sell.
You did a good job of selling it, Jim. You did a really good job of selling it. Okay. Don't cut yourself short.
Well, you guys are a hard sell too. Like, you're not just going to say.
It didn't happen overnight, but we knew when the move time came.
We knew when the time came, this was the move.
Only Jameson. We were going to die where we were at, or it was Jameson.
Yeah, it was like one or the other.
Well, and to float your boat, vice versa. There's only certain people we want to work with. Like, we don't want to work with everybody. We want to work with the Jason and Sophias of the world.
But I think, but that's what I think. I think, like, when I said to you, like, what happens, like, immediately I said, well, what happens is that we have the agents. That's what happens. So then things continue.
Right.
No matter what happens, it doesn't matter.
It manifests itself.
If you're a great player and you switch teams, you're still a great player.
Yes.
Like, it doesn't matter what happens to the industry, as long as, like you said, as long as you're good, you're still good.
I think one of my proudest moments is when we have, our events and we have everybody in a room, just like you just said. And Chris and I have to make I don't even see them. We make these rounds, right? Like, we want to make sure we hit everybody. And every person in that room has a story with us, right? Their move, the history, our relationship with them over, many years. And you walk out of there so energized after that.
I need to take the next day off every time. It's so much to, because all the interactions, we have a little less than 500 people. And so that sounds like a lot. It is. It's nowhere near the scale of the thousands that everybody else has. But, with all those individual relationships we have, by the end of the night, you're full. You're full, but then you need
exhausted.
To take a little, you're exhausted because it's.
Yeah, but it's great, isn't it?
It's meaningful.
Yeah.
Where do you guys, I just read yesterday, MRED posted 1.3 months of supply.
Mm-hmm.
14.8% jump in year-over-year pricing, 7% jump in pricing February to March. Well, what the hell is going to happen?
Well, and Jason, how about, the cost of rentals? What's going on there is having it happen on both sides at the same time.
Chris Johnson does a lot of our rentals for us. He's getting sight unseen 10% over rent. Before people even step in, here's my application. I know you're at 4,500. Here's 5,200. And we just want to get this in front of you before we see it.
So I'm privy to a lot of other brokerages numbers, across the country and throughout the world. So I get to see the under the hood of what's happening. And one thing that when you live in Chicago that you kind of have to open your eyes to is that relative to all the other big cities throughout the country, throughout the world, we are a bargain.
Yes.
We are.
I say that all the time.
So when we say we've had these jumps in relative terms compared to even Charlotte or wherever it may be, Tucson, it doesn't matter. We are such a value. So when I am waiting.
So do we get do we get to that point where it's like, if you don't have $3 million, get the hell out? I think LA and New York, Miami.
The converse. People can't afford those markets, so they gravitate here. So on a relative basis, then if we do see any type of correction in the interest rate, I think you guys know better than any human on the planet that there's so many would-be sellers that are on the shelf just waiting. They are on the shelf. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. They're worried they can't find a new place because the inventory is low, but they're not willing to sell to create the inventory. All that stuff kind of happens in concert, So when more sellers come in, then there's more inventory in the market. And our market has not been in sync, the buyer and the seller relationship. As you guys know, that's why you have this low inventory and
well, I think we also, at least, especially in the city, it's always very frowned upon to allow post possession. And I think that component has to change a little bit in the city. It's it's much more common in the suburbs. And I understand we work the suburbs, but we mostly work the city. And I think that if we could figure out a way where sellers and buyers don't think they're getting screwed, so to speak, that would work, because I think that would also
open up,
promote some.
Well, if they change these insane laws on squatting, that would open things up, because the first thing a lawyer will tell somebody is, okay, well, if they don't get out, it's 6 months.
Don't do it. Which it is. It's at least 6 months.
Yeah. So if that became a little bit, okay, we are
in Illinois, so I'm not going to hold my breath for that. But, we heard yesterday on this internal call that in the suburbs, people are saying, I have post-possession until December. And it's still so. Yeah. So, we are in April. They said not till December. So to your point, could that manifest itself in the city? Sure. Why wouldn't it?
I just think that would sort of quell that, I don't know where I'm going to go. So it would open things up. It would open things up. And I think people would be more open to making moves.
About 30% of my deals in the city this quarter were post-possession deals.
That's
at least 30%.
Historically, that has to be a new record.
Atypical.
For sure.
And
I'm just thinking of all of them. Everyone in my head is a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks,
Listen,
90 days.
It's a really fantastic solution. I think what gives me optimism, Jim is Professor Positive, and I have to be the one that's like, well, what about this risk? But what's got me the most optimistic about this current market is the depth of buyers. You guys all know when you have a good listing, you have 30 buyers, you have 20 contracts.
Crazy.
When you see that just means it is an inventory issue, and an inventory issue is primarily driven by the interest rate right now. Yep. There's other factors, but that is the one thing. So given the economy, you came from that world, none of us can predict where the interest rate's going to go, but even a half a point could be hugely impactful to our world. So we're not relying on new jobs. We're not relying on the price to fall or any of those things that are really hard to come by. This is a more solutionable thing that just will probably naturally happen, that the interest rate may fluctuate.
The other thing that makes our market a place where people want to move is we don't have issues like some markets have with insurance.
Yeah. Well, we're seeing some problems.
I just talked to somebody yesterday.
Flat roofs are going to be.
They're hard to.
Flat roofs are going to be gone soon.
Really?
I'm telling you.
Okay. You do a video on that, or have
he did already? He did already with an insurance broker.
That's the next thing.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
All right, that's good to look out.
And you know what's crazy part? We had a discussion about California and fire insurance a month and a half before the fires. And she literally sat there and told me what's going to happen.
Oh, geez.
Really? Yes, yeah. I swear to God.
So
and then I reposted it after fires. And I'm like, see?
She knew.
I did have a deal in January that my client had. They could not get their roof insured because the seller I represented the buyer. The seller could not find the receipt for their roof, and my client needed the house, insured for closing. He was a cash buyer. They insured the property without insuring the roof component because it was a flat roof, and they couldn't find the documentation.
About a year left, and there'll be no more insurance for flat roofs.
In the grand scheme of things, if that's the biggest deterrent in the city of Chicago,
it's not bad.
That's not bad, right?
Or snow in April.
Yeah. Right. And listen, there was a flake.
Yeah.
We'll take the one flake on Monday.
Yeah. So
we don't have the natural disasters, which are nice.
That's the weather component. I mean, truly, you guys all know the weather has become much more mild in Chicago.
Yeah.
It just is, as compared. Have you ever been in Miami in August?
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
No, thank you. Right? Like, it sounds so attractive to move down there. Or Scottsdale in August. No.
Sophia's in Michigan in August.
I'm in Michigan. Yeah.
I was in Scottsdale 2 weeks ago.
90 degrees.
We left a day early. We were on a text thread with Morty Jensen, who lives there sometimes because his kids go to ASU, so he got a little place out there. And I literally texted him. I said, "This weather is unacceptable."
Yeah, it's oppressive.
It was 98. It was 98 at 9:40.
Yeah.
And then the problem is at 1:30, I'm not sure what's hotter, the concrete or the sun. I said, Jensen, the heat is hitting me every which way.
How do you lather that up? I mean, do you spray it or do you lotion?
You better wear a hat there, big boy. Well, and again, it's this theory that Chicago just becomes more and more attractive, despite ourselves, as we know, our politics and all the things. But despite all those things, every year this has become a better place to live.
We are leading the nation in price appreciation. The Midwest is, in Chicago in particular. But the zoning laws are atrocious.
They're oppressive. So it's, we're probably not going to fix that either. So my optimism just goes back to that. A little bit of a rate, and we're all doing a lot better. And our buyers and sellers are doing a lot better.
And then you'll see, and then that rate will also, hopefully will bring down, not against the renting, the people that own rentals, but you will have a pullback in rent. Because all these multiple people that are paying $5,000 for a 2-bedroom, they're buyers. And they're just running after 5 or 6 places that have fallen through. They're just running to the rent.
Right.
In Chicago, Sophia and I went to a thing that last year. They're only building, 500 apartments this year and 600 next year because they cannot get through the zoning process. So you have 1,100 rental units being built in the whole city of Chicago in the next 2 years.
I'll make up the number, but I'm pretty damn sure that back in 2000, that number was 10,000 annually. We hit this level.
Remember all those cranes?
12,000.
Yeah.
So think about that. You went from 10,000, 12,000, and I seem to recall 16,000 one year, down to 500.
Yeah.
I mean, that's talk about the whip effect.
They were talking, one of the guys he says, we need 3,000 units a year to keep up with the demand.
Yes.
And he's like, and we're getting 1,100 in 2 years. He goes, this was last year. He goes, you think rent prices are bad this year? He goes, you got another thing coming. Wait.
I know the landlords, and even if you have a 2 flats in Lincoln Park or Lakeview, you're pushing the rent 15%.
Yeah.
On a unit that you've rented for the last 30 years for X amount of dollars.
Or the tenant is. They're, like you said, they're coming with a...
Yeah. With the check.
The tenants.
Yeah. The tenants are setting the market.
Yeah, true.
And you're like, oh my God.
I need a
place to sleep.
I need a place to sleep.
Right.
Oh man. Sophia, any thoughts before we wrap it up?
No, just keep buying real estate. Call us if you want to sell your property. We're real good at social media.
It's a truly interesting time, and especially in Chicago with the lack of inventory, the flight to quality, to brick and mortar, people not understanding where the stock market's going to go. And the stock market's up 80% over the last 2 years. So calm down. just a side note.
There was a lot of margin in there to go down a little bit.
We have, places, 40, 50 times over earnings.
Yes.
Uber hasn't made $1. It's trading 100 times over earnings. Relax.
Yeah.
But I think it's an amazing time for people to get involved, especially in the investment side of it too. Don't wait for rates to be 5% because that compresses cap rates and you're paying a lot more for investment properties. Buy those properties now. And I know people always say that and then refinance later. It's the way you make money.
It is.
I was talking to 2 investors the last couple of days. If the deal doesn't pencil out, it's probably a deal you want to buy.
Yeah.
If something's penciling out, you're overpaying. Get somebody that knows what they're talking about in that sense. And I think there's always opportunity. I don't care what is happening. I told this actually to my 14-year-old yesterday. I was like, man, whenever something bad happens, there is a silver lining and there's opportunity. If someone is losing money, someone's making money. It's a zero-sum game. Any final words for you?
No, I just want to say, thank you guys for trusting us, and making the move and coming over here. I think the results have worked for you.
Yes.
And,
I remember the side note, and we'll come back to your final notes. I remember that the company we're at, some guy said, when people move, they're like, we track their numbers because they always fall.
They always go down.
And when we had that quarter, in the back of my head, I go, how are those fucking numbers?
Well, it's a good final note because we didn't really recruit for 16 years. We just didn't do it. I wasn't sitting in meetings. And right when you all came on board, I didn't even meet you until afterwards. So I started doing some recruiting. Thank you, Jim, for talking to these 2, marquee agents. We started running our own numbers on just that. What happened to people after they came to us? The average is more than 100% increase in the first year.
That's amazing.
After joining us, because there's a transition period. There's this, and I reran that number 3-4 times. I was like, Dad. I don't believe it.
Okay,
I don't believe it.
But that is a reel. But that's a social media reel right there. That's a reel right there. Just run it. So, just keep running that.
And again, it almost sounds unbelievable. But that's the truth. That's what's happening. It's because, people like you, if you're given the right energy, situation, materials, you name it, what are you going to do with it? You know what you're going to do with it. You're your biggest quarter ever. That's what you're going to do with it.
Like the person that we just brought on, like we looked at her numbers and I looked at her and I always say, okay, tell me what do you do during the day? Tell me your day. Tell me the first hour of your day. And when I was meeting with her, I'm talking this, I'm like, you did this much and you have no system. I just looked at her and I will double your production.
Yes. You see,
I will double your production.
You know exactly.
We're going to do like 7 things and it's over. And there's a lot of people
simple.
like it's that simple. Yeah. There's great agents and they're just, they don't
have the right tools.
Yeah.
That's it. Guidance, tools, you need it.
Yeah. All right.
This was fun.
You.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
See you
please
next time.
subscribe, pass it on, and we'll see you guys soon. Thank you so much.